On the Himalayan plateau exists a sacred land. Many say that this land is a place where heaven meets earth, allowing the soul to be closer to the Creator. Some believe that only purity and tranquility in this place can help all beings shed earthly concerns and strive towards enlightenment. From these words, can you guess the land I'm going to talk about today? Let me tell you, this sacred land is none other than the mystical Tibet. It holds within it a spiritual energy source unmatched by any other. A convergence point of heaven and earth, as the author James Hilton of Lost Horizon once exclaimed. In Tibet, the sky touches the earth and the soul touches eternity. However, amidst the towering mountain ranges, Tibet and its gentle people are facing bitter destinies. Like the Holy Land of Jerusalem by the Dead Sea, Tibet, with its spiritual energy, has always been targeted by tyrants. If Jerusalem has witnessed rivers of blood in the enduring battles between Christianity and Islam under the guise of holy wars, Tibet is unfortunately no luckier, despite its position on the most majestic high plateau on Earth. Today, let's delve into what is happening in Tibet with the World Explainer. Land of isolation. The history of Tibet dates back to 500,000 years ago. Research documents indicate that ancient humans inhabited the Tibetan plateau from ancient times, around 500,000 years ago. Modern humans first appeared here at the latest around 21,000 years ago. With a terrain distinct from the rest of the world, the tribes in Tibet flourished in tranquility. Its feudal system developed over about 1,800 years, from the 5th century BC to the 13th century AD. However, after a prolonged period of peace, they began to face their first giant, later remembered as the largest empire in the world, the Mongol Empire. Recognizing the immense spiritual energy of this land, Genghis Khan and his generals only conducted one small campaign before withdrawing their troops. Later, through peaceful emissaries to Mongolia, Tibet succeeded in maintaining peace, albeit under the rule of the mighty Mongol Empire. After the collapse of the Yuan dynasty, Tibet was ruled by various tribal factions, independent from foreign powers for nearly 400 years. In China, the Ming dynasty advocated not to advance into Tibetan territory, although they asserted sovereignty by establishing regional military commands in some areas. The Ming maintained good relations with the local Buddhist leaders known as the Dharma Kings and granted titles to local leaders in this region. However, when the Qing dynasty overthrew the last Han dynasty, the Ming, to become the rulers of China, Tibet's fate began to take a truly painful turn. With a warlike spirit in their blood, the Qing dynasty, represented by Emperor Kangxi, sent a large army to invade Tibet under the pretext of eliminating the Khanate and restoring the lamas. With little effort, the Qing forces quickly crushed the Dzungar Khanate and installed Kelsang Gyatso as the 7th Dalai Lama. Subsequently, Kangxi began to establish garrisons in this land and gradually imposed his authority. By 1721, the Qing established a new government and officially turned the Dalai Lama into a nominal figure with no real power. Everything continued like this until after the Second World War. The clutch of communist tyranny. In 1950, just a year after the establishment of the People's Republic of China, Mao sent troops to Tibet to seize control of this land. 3 divisions with over 40,000 soldiers were overwhelming for a region that favored peace. They quickly succumbed with little resistance. The 14th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, was forced to acknowledge China's sovereignty and was granted only autonomy to maintain the safety of the people and the special beliefs of the region. However, if there's one thing I can be sure of in this life, it's not to trust the diplomatic promises from Beijing leaders too much. The story in Tibet is no different. China turned its back like a flipped pancake just 9 years later. Citing the existence of a feudal theocratic government in Tibet, China carried out what they called the democratic reform of Tibet to abolish serfdom, liberate the serf class, and eliminate feudalism in Tibet. This is a highly deceptive move by Beijing, because anyone who has studied this sacred plateau knows that what China wants to destroy is the cultural heritage that Tibetans have preserved for thousands of years. Unable to bear this oppression, the people of Tibet rose up to defend their own values under the leadership of the Dalai Lama. However, the peaceful and devout Tibetan Buddhists had little strength to resist the barrel of Chinese guns. The conflict ended quickly, with the Dalai Lama forced into exile in India, marking the Tibetan people's virtual loss of their homeland. Since then, over more than 6 decades of occupation, Tibet has suffered the brutal rule of the Chinese government. The people live in a suffocating furnace of oppression, both physically and spiritually. In particular, Tibetan Buddhism, with a history of over 1,500 years, has been severely devastated. When advancing into Tibet, Mao Zedong raised the slogan, "Dalai Lama, go home." Of the over 110,000 Tibetan monks at the time, 10,000 fled abroad. The rest were forced to return to normal life. Only about 7,000 were allowed to remain in the monasteries. The Chinese government has been ruthless in destroying temples, monasteries, and cultural relics. From over 2,600 Tibetan Buddhist temples, Tibet now has only about 70 left. During the Cultural Revolution of 10 years, Tibetan Buddhism was further severely damaged. Temples and monasteries were destroyed to ruins, bombed and destroyed. Monks and nuns were forced to marry, go against their vows and beliefs, and even tortured and imprisoned. Over the past half-century, over 1 million Tibetans have perished due to increasingly harsh repression by the Chinese Communist Party. In late 2015, the Chinese government declared that the Dalai Lama must obtain approval from the Central Party if he wishes to reincarnate. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, reincarnation must be approved by a secular government. They even did absurd things like issuing certificates for living Buddhas in Tibet. The list of living Buddhas is naturally designated and selected by the government. Recently, at the end of July 2016, the Chinese government sent troops to demolish the Larungar Buddhist Academy, which was considered the holy land of Tibetan Buddhism. The government mobilized bulldozers and excavators to destroy many traditional structures here, displacing over 40,000 monks and nuns. This action is seen as trampling and destroying a cultural heritage with a proud history of thousands of years. Perhaps by now, you're still wondering why Beijing would go to such lengths to send troops to this remote and frigid land. There's no economic benefit either, as Tibet ranks at the bottom of China's GDP rankings for decades. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, nothing is natural, and the continental power brokers are not foolish enough to make such a huge land meaningless. The sacred ground of Tibet. To understand Tibet, one must acknowledge its most prominent feature, religion. At first glance, this land is enveloped in an extremely peaceful Buddhist atmosphere. However, this sacred land is far from simple as one might think. It is the epicenter of the esoteric Tibetan Buddhist tradition, possessing an immense spiritual energy and unparalleled capacity for enlightenment. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition is a blend of Indian and Buddhist philosophies, which has captivated countless scholars amidst the vast volumes of mystical Sanskrit scriptures found here. Thus, the plateau beneath the Himalayas is often likened to a heavenly abode on earth. Before Buddhism's arrival, another religion known as Bon prevailed as Tibet's indigenous faith. Bon incorporated beliefs in spirits and shamanism, initially characterized as the Black Bon, or the Bon of gods, demons, due to its reliance on sorcery to control malevolent spirits. However, with the introduction of Buddhism to the region, it harmonized with Bon. Tibet then developed a distinct and unique religious syncretism. Although outwardly Buddhist, Tibetan culture still preserves many traditions such as sky burial, prayer flags, spirit traps, festival dances, and sacred stone carving. Regarding devotion, perhaps nowhere else rivals this land. In Tibet, there's a unique form of prostration called the 5-point prostration, deemed obligatory for Buddhists. This entails touching all 5 parts of one's body to the ground, symbolizing unity with the source of life. Whether male or female, old or young, adorned in clean attire or dust-stained robes, faces radiant or marked with the imprints of countless prostrations, all participate in this sacred act. Beyond mere devotion, Tibet and its religion share an intimate relationship with the science of spirituality. Through modern 21st century research, many mysteries surrounding this land's mystical energy remain unsolved. Most notably, its capacity to expand the stored knowledge within the mind and unlock celestial vision. Even as early as 1914, a French writer named Alexandre David Néel embarked on a solitary journey, braving treacherous mountain passes in the freezing snow to reach the roof of the world, Tibet, with the sole purpose of exploring the supernatural phenomena. As a result, the Western world became acquainted with the extraordinary lives of Tibetan lamas, especially learning about the mystical spiritual powers of those living in caves where heaven and earth seem to merge into one. By now, you may understand why the Beijing government is so eager to control this sacred land, right? Holding Tibet in their grasp is not merely about acquiring territory, but more importantly, it's about maintaining control over one of the world's most paramount spiritual havens, which holds within it the energy of an entire continent. So let's observe how the wheel of destiny will turn under their ruthless policies in this place. What do you think about the plight of the Tibetan people? Let's discuss it in the comments below. For now, goodbye, and until we meet again.